So here we are, part 2 of my 1/24 scale Hurricane build. If you haven't seen part 1, down below I'll have a link. You can jump back and watch part 1. That takes it from box up to primed kit, which looks like this. And then here in part 2, we're going to take this from this stage right through to a finished model. And it's ready for paint. There's nothing else I need to do on this other than start painting. And I'm finishing this up. Again, if you watch the end of part 1, I'm sorry, you're going to hear the same thing again. But for all of those who didn't see the end of part 1, my plan for this is to paint it up as a current warbird, the one that is currently flown by Vintage Wings of Canada, which was a Mark 12. Now this kit is a base kit as a Mark 1. Luckily, the only real difference between the Mark 1 and the Mark 12, the Mark 12 had the extra machine guns mounted on it, which I've drilled the holes for already, and it had a different spinner. The Mark 12 was a Canadian-built Hurricane, and it had a Packard Merlin with a Hamilton Standard propeller in place of the Rodal propeller. And the Hamilton Standard propeller resulted in a different shaped spinner. Luckily, the person I am building this for, the pilot of this warbird, does not care about being perfect. So he's okay with the spinner being a little different. He actually told me not to do really anything, just finish it in the markings. He's okay with it. I've taken the time to accuratize it as much as possible in terms of adding the extra machine gun in the cockpit. I've done some extra work to add some detail in the cockpit. So I'm giving him a little bit more than he was asking for, but I think he's going to be happy with it at the end. And then the paint scheme is going to be William McKnight's Hurricane. As I said, the Mark 12 flown by Vintage Wings of Canada. It's got green and brown on the top. The bottom was half sky, half black. So the paint sequence will be paint the sky half, then paint the brown, then the green, then kind of mask that off and paint the one black wing. Now, luckily, the gray, the green, the brown, the black is the same as the Lincoln, so I'll be painting it at roughly the same time as I'm painting this one. This one is my focus. I do want to get this completed for the pilot relatively soon. It's the 100th anniversary of Canada, and he's been flying the snot out of this plane around Canada, and I'd really like to present it to him before the season is over. So that also, some little things I've done to make the painting easier. I've left off the radiator housing and the carb intake, and that's because the split goes right down the middle, and this will allow me to paint the split through the area that the radiator sits on. So when this fits on, it'll look really nice. I'm not going to be weird masking. As well, the split goes down the radiator and actually continues through the intake. I have photographic evidence of that. So it's going to be a lot easier for me to mask that area while this is a separate piece, get it lined up really, really nicely so that when it does fit into place, right, I'll probably end up painting the line down here first, and then I can put this in place and ensure that my masking on the tub lines up with the line on the fuselage. And the same goes for here. You can see if you put this intake in, it's really hard to get up inside here and get the masking right, but if this is off, it's really easy to mask this and ensure the lines line up, and then when you glue it all together, it's gonna look really, really good. So that's the plan for that. And then once I get the painting done, the decals, it's gonna be a mix of kit decals and some aftermarket ones for the codes and some of the artwork from above and below decals. And then it's going to have the slightest of weathering. I'm not going to black wash it at all. I'm just going to add the tiniest amount of exhaust staining onto it just to make it look like it has flown, but not heavily, you know, war used or anything like that. And then just all the little things, glue on the landing gear, the wheels, get it all completed, get the exhaust on, get the landing lights and marking lights and all that stuff glued on, and then I can present it to him. Hopefully I'll get in touch. He's in town probably for a little bit through August doing some practice flights, and I'm hoping by the end of August I can present this to him before the air show, because it's going to be a lot to bring this out to the air show, but that's the plan. So we'll see how that goes. So that's the plan for this. I just said that twice. I apologize. But yeah, let's get right into it. You guys can watch me finish this kit and get it right down to a completed model. And as always, my name is Sean, and this is Sean's Aviation. So as I mentioned in the intro, I got right into painting the kit, and you'll see I already have the sky painted on the bottom. That was the easiest color, as there was no extra masking that need to be done. Then I go ahead and I mask off that sky and any areas where it could overlap with the camo, and then I begin the process of painting the camo. Now you'll kind of jumps. I don't actually have the footage of me actually painting, but you'll see after I get the sky painted, I mask off the bottom as well as the fuselage band. That was painted sky as well. So I did that, and then there's a few little things I did, including the exhaust strakes on the forward fuselage. Those were just kind of winged from, no pun intended, looking at pictures online and doing my best at guesstimating the shape and size and placement. I had no real references in terms of measurements. I just did my best. And from there, you get the brown painted. You'll see that gets painted on, and then I just work my way around with those little putty worms, masking off section by section by section and getting the green camouflage painted on. And that takes a bit of process. It's a couple of days involved in that because you got to let the paint dry, pull the masking, dry it enough that you can do the next round without interfering with the previous color, and etc, etc. So it takes a day or two to get me through all of that camo, and then yeah, you'll see it looks really, really good. And now once I get all of that camo completed, I have to go ahead and mask off and paint the black wing. I'm not using straight black as I find it's a little too dark for scale effects. So I'm actually using a German dark gray, which comes out very close to black. But scale effect, it looks really, really good, and it still gives you a bit of differentiation between actual black items, things like propeller blades and that kind of stuff, and the black of the airframe. I tend to use this color for most aircraft that are painted black. It just looks really good on scale effect. But either way, you'll see me, I mask off the bottom of the wing. I also have to mask off that radiator housing as well as the oil cooler, and make sure I get the gear door painted and all those other little pieces that are part of that. So I get all that done, and then you can see I move on and start prepping for decals. And as usual with my decal process, I start by laying down a base layer of future floor polish. For those out there who do not use this process, I find it's really good. I just use a nice soft brush, just brush paint that on. It settles down nicely. It finds its level. You don't notice the brush marks, and it actually dries really, really thin, so you don't lose a lot of that panel line detail. You're still able to do black wash and whatnot after the fact. So I use that. Just as a side note, it's actually not available anymore. This bottle I have is probably 15 or 20 years old, if not even older. So there's a couple of other products out there you can use. Just do a bit of research. I haven't, off the top of my head, I don't remember the one that you can use. There's a couple on Amazon that apparently are really good, and I will need to get some more soon, so that's coming up later. But either way, any type of this liquid floor polish works really well. Paint it on, you get a nice gloss surface, the decals go down, there's no silvering, there's nothing like that, and then you can do whatever final coats you want to do after the fact. So you'll see I go through, I future this entire airframe, and then I start laying down decals. And as I'm plugging through on the decals here, just a quick note. The decals I'm using are a mix between the Trumpeter decals. I also have a 1/24th scale Airfix Hurricane. That was part of the deal I got when I was building this kit. So I'm using a combination of the Trumpeter decals that came in the kit, the Airfix decals, as well as the above and below decals specific to Willie McKnight's airframe. And the reason I'm mix and matching it is I'm using a lot of the stencils that came out of the Trumpeter kit, but the roundels were wrong. The red was way too bright, and I didn't have the right style for the fuselage. So I ended up using the Airfix roundels because they had better color. And then I used the Trumpeter stencils because they fit the kit and the accuracy a lot better. And then I used above and below for all of the other things like the LEA code, the serial number, the artwork on the forward fuselage. That was all above and below. And then I made my own civil registration because the decals were made from the wartime aircraft and not the current flying warbird. It did not include the civil registration. So I just did that up in Photoshop, printed it off on my printer, and installed those. And it turned out looking really, really good. You can see here I'm kind of working my way through the sprues, just making sure I have all the little things done. Right now I'm actually working on the exhausts. They come in multiple pieces. Each exhaust, there's two cylinders each feed into a single exhaust stack. So there's 3 stacks on each side, and each stack is made up of 3 separate pieces, 2 halves and then a separate piece to make the little exhaust fishtail. So it's a lot of work. Each side works out to being 9-10 pieces with the base. And then there's a little bit of cleanup I had to do, a little bit of sanding and whatnot to clean up some of the seams. They just did not look scale after I assembled everything. So I got that all done, and then I painted that with an Alclad, and then sealed that and got ready to install those on the aircraft. And you'll also see I'm poking away at other little things, the radiators, along with that housing, the propeller, the landing gear, all of these little mini sub-assemblies that I couldn't start assembling too early on the build. Now is the time when I'm taking to go through and get all that done. So while it looks like I just added decals and the model's finished, I still have a lot of work to go with all of these minor sub-assemblies and some painting and stuff to get ready for final assembly. So you'll see now I'm starting to get to the last couple of steps. I was focusing here on getting the landing lights and all of those associated bits and pieces assembled and glued together. The tail wheel has to be put on. The wingtip lights were installed and they were painted the appropriate green or red depending on which side they're on. All the machine guns, the extra 2 machine guns on each wings have to be installed. Things like the antenna, all the little landing lights, all those little things all have to be glued on. That all takes time. And yeah, it's a lot of work to get these fiddly bits done. It's one of those you really have to take a step back and make sure you don't rush, because once you get those decals on that final, you know, whatever your final finish, whether it be a gloss coat or a semi-gloss. In this case, I finished it with a semi-gloss or a flat coat. The model looks complete and you just want to see a finished model. But there's so much effort that goes into those last couple of steps and you cannot rush. You start to rush the little things and all those little details start to look off and it just ruins the look of the model. So you just have to kind of buckle down and focus on what you need to get done and take the time to do it right. Otherwise, it's going to look horrible. And that's one of my big issues. I just want to see a finished kit and I start rushing. And then I always have all these little things, little landing lights that aren't installed properly and broken antennas and crooked Pt2 tubes. All that kind of stuff is what ruins that look. So you really, really have to take the time to put the effort in to make it look good. And here you'll see the actual last thing I end up doing on this kit is that civil registration decal that I commented on earlier that I printed. And that's because I completely forgot about it. I finished the model. I had it sitting on the shelf. It was a few days before I was supposed to present it to the pilot. And my wife was like, hey, where's the registration? And I was like, right, I completely forgot. So that's kind of the last thing I did, was quickly get that printed up, get that installed, and then it was completed and I was ready to present it to the pilot. So that's how I finished off the kit, was a round of decals. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get any type of wrap-up video on this kit. It was pretty tight timelines between when I finished the kit and when I had to get it delivered to the owner. I think I had about 3 days from the minute I put that last round of the registration on the tail, which you just saw, to when I delivered it to the new owner. And that also involved me working night rotations on some of those days, as well as having to get a box from work. And then I built up a really impressive, I wish I got pictures of it, a foam core frame that sat inside the box and held the model both laterally and I don't know the other word. Anyways, front to back and side to side. It locked it in place so the model wouldn't move, and then it was resting on some foam core stand, so the landing gear didn't take the weight of the kit. It was resting on the rear fuselage and the wings. That way, if it did get any type of vertical jolt, it wouldn't snap any gear off. Nothing held it in the vertical other than keeping it off the gear, so it did have the ability to hop up and down if it hit a bump. But I mean, the owner wasn't planning to ride on a roller coaster. He was driving his RV back to his house a couple hours away. So it should have survived. I haven't actually talked to him since it was delivered. It should have survived. Yeah, so I didn't really have a chance, and I completely forgot to take a video of the completed model, unfortunately, so apologies to all of you. It turned out really good, as you saw. I'm very happy with it. Some few minor issues. Most of those come down to the fact that the decals were not specific to the restored airframe. They were based off historic pictures and were slightly different from what was painted on the restored airframe. And then the kit itself being a Mark I, whereas the restored bird was a Mark 12. There were some minor panel and shape issues that if you really know what you're looking for, you would find. But other than that, it turned out really good. The owner, the pilot, was super happy with it. He had no complaints at all. He was very happy with the kit. So that was that made it all worth it to see his reaction when I opened the box and he got to see it. So that was worth every moment to building that kit, and it's going to live very fondly on his shelf with all of the other warbirds that he has flown. That's actually the 3rd Hurricane that he has flown in his lifetime. So yeah, it was very cool to get that done. I did manage to get some pictures, so I'm going to wrap this video up. And then we'll take a quick look at those pictures. So on that note, I want to thank all of you for watching these. I know sometimes it can be a struggle to stick around to the end of these time lapses, but I do appreciate it. So thank you for that. Let's take a quick look at some of the pictures of that finished kit, and then that'll be the end of this video. So stay tuned for some more. See you next time.